What's up, guys? Welcome, welcome. Welcome, everybody. Hello. Cool, we got a good little group. I think we can get started. Hey, everybody. If, Christian likes the music, I might have to, I'll just leave it in there. If you're just joining me because you've seen my lives, my Instagram lives before, this is a different thing tonight. Usually I'm pretty silly on here, and we either read a children's story or we play games or something like that. Those are still good things, but tonight is not the night for them. Tonight, I felt compelled last week to talk to my friend Christian Dawson, who is a good friend of mine and a black pastor in the area. And he's just a really solid, smart dude. And I know that I have a lot of white followers on here. And I, like everyone, am learning a ton right now. And I want to be part of helping. So basically, I was like, this is a hard conversation to talk about. Talking about racism is hard and clumsy, and it's really important. And so Christian is gracious enough to join me tonight to talk about racism and how to talk about it and what it looks like to be a Christ follower, and to have this conversation and what the Bible says about racism. So just a few kind of, not like ground rules, but you know what I mean. Before we get started, we're going to shoot for a Q&A at the end. Please use the question box at the bottom. I don't know if I'm pointing at it. It might be reversed. It might be over here. Please send your questions in the question box because I don't want to like just scroll through all the comments. So if you have a question for Christian, send it in the box below. And if this is something that is helpful to you as we talk, don't like tag someone who should have heard it in your story, but just send it to him after and say, hey, this has been helpful for me, wanted to pass it along. We just want this to be helpful and a good conversation and kind of a good beginning to that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my friend Christian. Christian is a pastor, a writer. He's a super talented musician, and it's crazy that he can do all those things because I'm just trying to do music and he could play circles around me. But anyways, this is Christian, and we will connect here and get started.
I think, hey,
Hey,
we're
what's up,
working.
my friend?
Dude, I think there's a little bit of a delay because I'm like listening to you talk all of a sudden and I'm like, yo, I'm on here.
Well, I'm glad it connected now. It feels like there's not too much of a delay right now. Like this
Nah,
seems
not much. I
good.
just like cut you off in your sentence and I was like, all right, here we go.
Well, I'm glad that it all worked out. But first of all, if you're just joining again, this is my friend Christian. He's amazing. Go ahead and give him a follow. He's just incredible. So tonight we are going to talk about racism and how to talk about it, and especially like what the implications are for Christians in the church. Not like other people
Yeah.
named Christian like you, but
I know that's a weird thing growing up being named Christian. You're in church and they're like,
Yeah,
Christian. And I like look up if I was tired. Like,
right.
dang, man.
Well, we'll say Christ follower tonight to make the distinction there. But
All right, thank you. Thank you.
um, cool. So Christian and I talked earlier this week. We've got a lot of content to work through, and we want to make sure that we have time for Q&A at the end. So let's just
Cool.
jump into it. Kind of the first establishing question that I had. There might be people on this feed that are watching that all of this feels new to them, like the whole
Okay, yeah.
conversation. Obviously, we're in Seattle, which is pretty progressive, and so there's like
Mm,
we talk about this all the time, but there might be some taking for granted of some of these words that are getting thrown around. So just to
right.
give some context to words like racism and privilege, what are some examples of things that affect you on a daily basis as a black man that I likely don't even think about because I'm white?
Right. Um, Man, that's fantastic. So there's a couple different things I want to even open up to say. One, like, and this isn't because of Isaac. This is just like just to always have these conversations. I don't speak for all Black people, and Isaac didn't ask me to. Isaac asked me to share my
Yeah.
experience, and so like, there's not a single, like, I think monolithic would be the right word, Black experience that I can
Yeah.
share for everybody. About me. So I'm actually like African American. My mom is from Ethiopia, which is part of Africa, and my dad
Mhm.
is from Oakland. And then when his parents divorced, we moved, or his family moved up to Seattle.
Mhm.
So I was born in Seattle and then spent most of my life in South King County. So anywhere from like SeaTac to Des Moines to Kent to Federal Way to Renton, if you're from the area, you get that joke, Renton. And so, but even in the neighborhoods I grew up in, like, I didn't grow up in, and I'm a Christian and living in, I grew up in a really, in a multi-ethnic church, which was really cool experience for me to have. So I didn't grow up in like a homogenous Black community. I
Mhm.
grew up and like my best friends, like my senior high school, my best friends were Korean, were Filipino, were Black, were Russian, were white. So like I had a few Hispanic friends, like, so I grew up not with like a homogenous Black experience. And so I just kind of wanted to label that and name that. And so talking about like racism and privilege and things like that, what are some things I experienced? Again, like, I take it with a full grain of salt, knowing that, your boy lived in the Seattle area his whole life. And so what I experienced as a guy in the Seattle area is a completely different experience than like a lot of my brothers and sisters who live on the South or on the East Coast or
Yeah.
even the Midwest. Like, we have different experiences of that. And so, especially being in Seattle, a city that's progressive, and being in a city that's predominantly an area state that's like
Yeah.
70% white or something like that. Um, my experiences of racism were typically inovert. And so when
Mhm.
we talk about racism, a lot of people think of the overt person. They think of the like crotchety guy who sits on his porch and
Yeah.
like goes, I hate Black people, or I
Mhm.
hate Mexicans, or I hate this, or I hate that. And we call that person the racist. Which, yeah, sure, that can be a form of prejudice and racism. But when we actually are talking about racism, and in my own experience, racism didn't look so much like the crotchety old guy who didn't like me and called me a nigger. Like, the racism to
Mhm.
me more so looked like being walking in a store, in a grocery store, and with a group of friends, but I'm the one who's always conveniently followed if I had a bag,
Mhm.
especially if I had a backpack on.
Mhm.
Or it's in the city I live in now, living in Kirkland, Washington, which is predominantly white and very affluent. Like, it's when I go on a jog or a run, which I hate doing, but when I do it, because the gyms are closed with COVID, and like I see other people, and you can tell, like, as soon as they see me, if they have, especially sometimes if they have a family, they cross the side of the street because,
Mhm.
assuming they'll feel safer. Or when you're in an elevator and people grab their purse, or when it's me and
Yeah.
them in it, or there's just little things that, or when you're having the conversation and you're in a space that's predominantly white, and so someone will make the racist joke, or they'll say something that's just like off-putting and uncomfortable, but because you're the only person of color in that room, you're like, well, if I get into this right now, then am I going to lose this friendship? Am I going to be the guy who kills the mood? And so you sit there in like silence and frustration at times, because you're just like, I don't have the energy to put up with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think what we have to remember is racism. One more example I'll give too. And again, it's a combination of racism and institutions and prejudice and things like that. And privilege is when I send it. So I do music, and I have the privilege of getting to lead worship and speak at different things. And especially a few years ago, when I first became the campus pastor at Northwest, I'd be emailing someone about something in the university, and then back and forth. So they didn't know who I was, they didn't see my face. But as soon as I'd show up to the event or the venue or something, all of a sudden you could tell that they were surprised I was Black. Now,
Mhm.
the thing is, they were actually excited I was Black. And so, like,
Mhm.
oh man, we have a Black guy, like, this is gonna be awesome, da 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 da. But
Yeah.
still, it's even like the underlying assumption
Yeah.
that the person who the pastor of the university isn't going to be black. It's the notion that I grew up with toys, and every superhero toy I grew up with didn't ever get to look like me. It's when I use a
Yeah.
microphone when I'm speaking, and it's over the ear microphone that's skin colored, but it's not my skin color. It's white.
Right.
It's flesh tone band-aids that don't look like my flesh.
Right.
It's all these different experiences that you have that tell you this world wasn't really made for you.
Mm.
Even if we
Mm.
like you, this world wasn't really made for you. And
Cool.
so, yeah, it's those sort of experiences that, again, I know there's tons of experiences of people who get pulled over randomly a ton. I haven't gotten pulled over randomly a ton because I purposely, when I bought my first car when I was in my 20s, I bought a car that was super tinted windows. And interesting
Mm.
enough, compared to like some of my other friends who are African American, I get pulled over way less. And
Mm.
so that could be causality, but whatever. It's just, but I did that because one, I'm a musician and don't ever want gear stolen. But two, I
Right.
was like, I just want to reduce the risk of me being pulled over
Yeah.
unnecessarily. It's,
Mm.
growing up, and my mom told me since I'm a little kid to, if when you're driving or walking down the street, like, don't wear your hoodie. Like, just take your hood off, have your face fully shown. It's, if I get pulled over because I speed sometimes,
Yeah.
it's as soon as I pull over, I make sure I turn off my music, I roll down all my windows, I turn off the engine, and I put the key on the dash and I hold the front seat. Like, that's what I was
Mm.
taught. That's my lived experience of what to do, because I don't want to be another statistic. I don't want to
Yeah.
be, and even alongside that, and then we can get to something else, but it's even the fact that me and my two younger brothers who are 25 and 24. It's the fact that all of us are known as the black kids who are breaking statistics. All three
Mm.
of us have college education. All three of us, I had my full tuition paid for a leadership scholarship. My middle brother did. My youngest brother became a Gates scholar. um,
Mm.
it's having three black men who now are all working in their fields. I've finished my higher education. My middle brother's working on a PhD. My youngest brother's working to become a doctor. But all of us are known as breaking the stereotype.
Right.
Like, we're breaking the mold. We're making it. And so even those sort of things were like, that's not necessarily the norm that we grew up with.
Mm.
um, those are some of the things that like, even as a guy in Seattle, those are the things that we experienced.
Man. Oh, dude, thank you for sharing that with us. And I think that every example you gave is a really, I don't know, it just helps paint the picture. Like,
Hmm.
like I never would have thought of like the Band-Aid thing. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
there are so many things. I think that what you said about it being the feeling that the world was not built for you, and that really resonates with me, is like that is inherently evil and wrong,
Hmm.
that ideology takes root in people's brains. So
Yeah.
um thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to be really helpful to people as we move through our conversation. But um I think that just you texted me about this kind of right before we got started, but maybe a good place to go just right off the bat is like, what does the Bible have to say about racism? What does Jesus have to say
Right.
about racism?
Yeah. So, there's no scripture in the Bible that says thou shalt not be a racist.
Right.
Um, and so, people are like, there's a ton in the scripture about how we interact, love, and treat people who look different than us, who are of different ethnicities or different colors. Like, if you just want to start there, that doesn't even take like a lot of work to do. You can basically start on page 1 of the Bible and get into human dignity and
Yeah.
the image of God in every single person being like as part of God, like God's kid to some degree, and bearing the image of God. You can easily get to Jesus and his comments on loving the stranger or the foreigner or the enemy. You could get to Deuteronomy and Leviticus, and you can look at the greatest command summarized in the Bible as loving God displayed in loving neighbor.
Yeah.
The Shema talks about you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the way they interpreted that too was then later, and the second commandment's like it, you shall love your neighbor or the other human, or as I think Leviticus says, the foreigner.
Yeah.
Which even gets to that. You could
Mhm.
get to Jesus's teachings. You could get to Paul in the New Testament. Interestingly enough, that every conversation Paul has about the gospel. So I'm getting fired up and talking up
No,
faster and
it's
faster,
good.
but
Go for it.
every conversation that Paul has where he explains justification by faith and
Yeah.
reconciliation with God, as soon as he talks about that, interestingly enough, there's not a single letter that Paul writes that does not flip automatically to how you treat other people in your society, specifically of a socioeconomic difference, ethnic
Yeah.
difference, Jew,
Yep.
Gentile, etc. You can get to the book of Revelation, the very end of the Bible, and you constantly see every nation, tribe, tongue, language, all
Yeah.
imaged by God under the rule of God. You could do that. That's like basic reading of the Bible, and you don't need a commentary.
Yes.
But the part that I find even more fascinating is the parts of the Bible that like go way more into it, because racism, if you want to like get an academic definition, racism, as far as I know, as far as I've understood, is defined by the Academy essentially simply as prejudice plus power. And
Mm.
so even that even gets into like why reverse racism is whack. Like racism basically is about like those who have power in society and are able to form society in a certain way because of that power.
Yeah.
And so can a black person be racist in America? To some degree, no. Like if you want a real
Mhm.
definition, an African American, a black
Yeah.
person, any other minority can act prejudice and enact those prejudice, but they don't have societal power. And so therefore,
Mm.
like by definition, they can't really be racist. And so
Yeah.
I know that's semantics, but that doesn't mean they can be prejudiced, and that's okay. Anyway, so you get into this idea of racism is prejudice and power, right? And so the
Yeah.
question then is for a follower of Jesus, or for any person who just wants to ask if Christianity has anything to say about this, which I think the answer is yes. The
Hmm.
question then gets to, how does the Bible call people to use power?
Yeah. Hmm.
And that's the part that we have to do the work of looking. And if you want to just start in the Bible, again, you can get to like page 3 of the Bible, the first kids of humanity. You get Cain and Abel. And what is Cain and Abel? It's a story about one brother overpowering, even physically through violence
Yeah.
and brute force, overpowering his other and killing him. You get into all these stories of Lamech comes right after, and he's like using his power to take and grab all these women as his wives and concubines. You go just the next book over, and you see these stories of a whole people group now being
Mhm.
subjugated, Israel under Egypt, because of
Yeah.
power, and is
Yep.
actually now used on an institutional level through Egypt. Um, you could, I mean, I could do this all day, and I
Yeah.
won't right now, but you could basically go page after page after page. One of the interesting things is when you get to the prophets in the Bible, and you just look at the whole narrative of the scripture, you get to the prophetic literature. And in the Bible, the people who, when God looks at his people and when he's frustrated with these people, he constantly goes back to your system and your society is unjust. He talks about being at the city gate, and justice is not happening in the city gate. What is the city gate? The city gate is the place where people would go to the court. The city gate was actually the
Yeah.
court system of their day. And God would
Mhm.
go, your courts aren't just. And there's people in your community, in your society, who are getting trampled over because the society and the court systems in your society aren't just. The scales
Mhm.
are constantly tipped, is another thing the Psalms talk
Yeah.
about, injustice. That's why God's people are constantly, even like the sin of Sodom was known as
Yeah.
injustice. Yeah, you can get into that. You can get into Jesus. And Jesus
Mhm.
talks about over and over and over, those who are in power do not lord it over them, but become the servant of all. You get
Mm.
to, I
Yeah.
mean, you just go page after page after page, where there's Philippians 2. Jesus, though he is God, did not count equality with God as a thing to be grasped, but submitted himself, humbled himself, even to the point of a servant who died. Like
Yeah.
you get this display of power, 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 and how are followers of Jesus called to use their power? It's always for the benefit and the service of others.
Mhm.
How how does the Bible speak to racism? How does it speak to issues of power? Well, really, the Bible calls people to create societies in such a way where power is distributed in a way where every person is taken care of. There shall be no sick or poor among you is one of my favorite scriptures out of Leviticus,
Yeah.
everyone's favorite book. But like the people of God from their Genesis were intended to create a society and a city of people who there were never poor. And you could get into,
Mm.
oh, I could nerd out on this for days. But long story short, the Bible talks about creating systems, creating societies where power is used in a way that serves all people well.
Yeah.
Now, that gets into like another framework, which there's people who disagree with me. There's a scholar named Caleb Rosado, and he talks about how that's why we have to be careful, though, because in the biblical perspective and imagination, the problem is not simply like who does not like someone else; it's how is power being used.
Mm.
But interestingly enough, and this is where people disagree with me, but this is my opinion, not the opinion of every black person. But as a follower of Jesus, I just think this is what the Bible is trying to say: is that it's not enough only to switch who has power in society,
Yeah.
because the problem is not simply power and who has it. The problem is the human heart.
Yeah.
And as a Christian, I have to be willing to look at Jesus' worldview and accept that there is a sin problem, there is an evil, there's injustice happening in my heart, happening in your heart, happening in
Yep.
every person's heart. And if that is
Hmm.
not addressed too, if we don't deal with the human heart, if we don't deal with the problem there, then we're just going to keep going through these cycles. Because really,
Yeah.
what like gives me the ability to give up my power for somebody else? Only when my heart has changed, you know. And so,
Hmm.
to some degree, now the critique of Christianity is that that has led Christians to be passive, to say, "Oh,
Hmm.
it's just a sin problem. It's just our heart, so we don't have to do anything." Nothing could be further from the gospel truth. It's
Yeah.
actually once we realize that like our hearts have been freed, that it actually frees us to use our power for other people. And so I could get into that for days. I'll just give you
That's
one
good,
other thing about
man.
the Bible that like excites me. So the
Yeah.
Bible talks about human power and the human heart being corrupt, but along with that, like the other problems along with it too are like not only is the heart corrupt, but society's corrupt. And so I
Yeah.
have to trust and believe that one day Jesus is coming back and he's going to fix society and create a society of justice. We read Isaiah every Christmas, and he shall reign forever and ever. Of his dominion there will be peace and it will have no end. Peace and justice will have no end. And so
Yeah.
even that, I have to say, like, the Bible says there's a problem in the human heart. The Bible says there's a problem in society. We often in the Bible call those societies Assyria, Nineveh, Babylon, Rome,
Hmm.
Greek,
Hmm.
Persia. They're all these
Hmm.
societies and systems that work and organize and collect, and they really create human evil that is often characterized by violence and death. Which is why the
Yep.
gospel's crazy, because, like, what does Jesus do? He says, throw death at me, and Jesus actually takes on death.
Yeah.
The only threat every empire or nation or police force ever has is death, and Jesus conquers death by being
Hmm.
raised back. And so what the gospel actually says is that you can even throw death at me, but it's not going to hold me down.
Yeah.
And so there's like evil in the heart, there's evil in society that Jesus has to address both of those. And I also have to just say the biblical worldview is like there's supernatural evil, the devil, demonic,
Yeah.
whatever, and like
Yeah.
we have to be engaged with that too. But none of those things call us to be passive in our societies and our cities. And that
Yeah.
was a lot, but like, you got me fired
No.
up on like one of my favorite things to talk about. So like,
No, dude,
let's keep going.
that was so so good. And honestly, we might have to do a part two that's just specifically digging into like, references in the Bible that are
Oh
preaching
yeah.
against this thing. So I love it, man. Thank you for sharing that. And I love that, like, because you see that a lot in, especially on like Instagram comments, like it's a sin issue. It's, as this kind of deflection, when really it's like, yes, exactly. And that invites action. And so just like
Right.
what you're saying. So I love it, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
I thought it was awesome. Um, so for people, if I put myself in the place of someone who just tuned into this, maybe they don't know who either of us are, and
Mm.
they're just going, okay, so we've got some definitions. I understand now that the Bible, like, without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, calls us to be just and to love each other and to not be racist and to
Yeah, like create
actively
better
combat that.
societies. Yes,
Yes,
100%.
yes. So if those things are clicking for the first time for people, um, and then it goes to like, well, what next? So for people who
Right.
are new to the idea of talking about racism, what are some ways for them to kind of prepare for like having conversations with people, like with their loved ones or friends,
Right.
or if it makes sense to post about it, and that could
Hmm.
be our own thing. We could talk about that in a minute, but just like,
Yeah.
how do they start getting to like, okay,
What do
I
I
get
do?
it.
Like, how do I
What do I
start?
say? Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. One, I think you gotta just like take the pressure off yourself,
Hmm.
like one, and I'm really gonna talk to probably like my friends and family, my brothers and sisters who are white for a second. Like,
Hmm.
one, let go of white guilt. I mean, some people would say, hold on to it. I say let go of it. I don't think white guilt is helpful. Um, Again, that's just my opinion. When we talk about privilege, like you are a beneficiary of a system that you did not create, even if some ways maybe you even perpetuated it. You're a beneficiary. You did
Yeah.
not create the system, you are a beneficiary of it. But that also, even though you're not responsible for creating it, now you're just responsible to use what it's given you.
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
let go of guilt and just take hold of responsibility. Like,
Yeah.
okay, what can I do to help? Like, what can I do to make a difference? This is going to oscillate between a lot of ideas, but like one, social media can be helpful, it can be hurtful. So like, try to not just bring up ideas from within yourself, like maybe find people who are educated, who have thought through some of
Yep.
these things, who at least even have lived experience. Don't get me wrong, I can humbly acknowledge that there are, like, I have white friends who are way more read up on the history of racism in America than I am. But
Mm.
they also respect that it's more of my lived experience. And
Yeah.
so I'm willing to listen to them and like learn and facts, but at the same time, so listen, just ask people questions, be willing
Yep.
to be wrong, like be okay being wrong, be okay with saying the right thing. I think right now what people are saying is silence can be violence. I
Mm.
don't, anyway, that's a saying. Um, Instead, like, just let go of guilt, take responsibility of what you can do, and just talk. Like, have a conversation, talk to your parent. Like, next
Yeah.
time you're in a space where there's only one other person of color, and just watch their posture. Like, watch how they're doing, watch when things are said, like, just see how they react, and then show empathy. Because sometimes one of the best gifts someone could give me is not a post on social media, but it's when I'm the only black guy in the conversation and someone says something and, like, I get quiet. Like, I need someone else to be there for me sometimes. I
Yeah.
need someone else to go, hey, like, do you notice, like, all of a sudden Christian got tense and he got quiet? Watch my body, like, watch my
Mm.
body language. Do that. I know there's a lot of people who different generation and whatnot I have good friends who completely disagree with me. They don't believe in, like, racism. They don't believe in, like,
Mm.
Black Lives Matter or anything like that. And I'm not writing them off. Like, I think we shouldn't be for cancel culture at the same time. Like, I'm willing to stay in the conversation and be, like, cordial with somebody and hold civility with somebody who completely disagrees with me. Again, that's
Mm.
where I'm at. I would also ask you to be okay with people, especially African Americans, who we're actually really angry right now and we don't have the emotional capacity for civility. Um, Anger is not bad in and of itself. Anger says that something is wrong.
Yeah.
Anger is an emotional response to something being wrong. One group of language that, just to get nerdy for a second, like our brain, if you think about this, like we have the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, right? Prefrontal cortex is typically more logic. It's where the thinking and the processing happens. Limbic system is where more of our emotions happen. It's where fight or flight happens. And when you're talking to people, especially like when you're talking to black people right now who are this is not an issue of, like, what do I think? This is also what do I feel and what is in my bones, what is in my body, what
Yeah.
have I experienced? I'm coming from my limbic system right now. I'm not just coming from my prefrontal cortex. So what that means is when the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system speak different languages at times. And so don't try to just be rational and, like, argue with people. Like, just listen and
Yeah.
hear what they're feeling, not just what they're
Mhm.
saying. Don't argue words, listen to emotion.
Yeah.
Again, so I just say, like, get rid of the white guilt, have conversations. If you want to post on social media, feel free. Just, like, ask questions, be willing to post the
Yeah.
wrong thing, apologize, and then try again.
Yeah.
Um, at the
Mm.
same time, I just would encourage people to do more than social media. Social media is helpful in bringing awareness. It's a great way to use a platform like you're doing, but also, like, I mean, I've had so many friends and family who just call me and say, hey, I understand. Like, I just hear you're going through a lot of pain. And though I haven't experienced it, I know I could just imagine how hard that is. And just standing in solidarity means a lot.
Yep. Mm. That's really good. That's really good. I liked what you said too about um, like not writing people off in general, but also I think there's a lot of, and I mean, you could speak to this better than I could, but it seems like there's a lot of misconception around the anger of the Black community.
Right.
Just because anger is a really hard emotion for the person who's not angry to respond to, because of course it's a negative emotion. And
Right.
but I think I've heard it explained that it's like any pain like comes with anger in some way, shape, or
Yes.
form. Like if someone
Yeah.
breaks a bone and swears, you're not gonna be like, dude, don't swear. It's like,
Right.
if the bone's sticking out of the arm, it's like, well, that kind of makes sense.
Does
um
my, yeah, it's saying something's wrong. Yeah.
yes, it
Right.
needs to be addressed. And yeah, I love that.
and
I think
and,
that's
and
awesome.
again, like, anger is not a wrong emotion in of itself. It's just what we do with it. But
Hmm.
right now, like, let people, yeah, anyway, we could go on that for hours. Let's move on.
Yep, love it. That's awesome. Dude, we're flying. We're making good time on these questions here. um One thing really specifically that I think people are probably seeing a lot of right now. So obviously, the phrase Black Lives Matter is both like an actual movement you can donate to. It's
Hmm.
also like a chant that every single protest right now. It's a hashtag. But I think like what I see people having a hard time with is distinguishing between the idea Black Lives Matter and then when people, I don't know, I'm going like this isn't really helpful, but
No, I
um,
like it. I like it. Keep it up.
okay, I'll go for it. So if we have Black Lives Matter over here as a phrase and an idea, and then there are people holding up, well, all lives matter. And there is some context to both of those that makes all lives matter actually hurtful and
Right.
not helpful in this conversation. So, but I think that there are a lot of well-meaning people that don't get like why that is, that it matters
Right. Yeah.
that you're saying one and not the other.
100%. And even like right now, I've heard a lot of like blue lives matter, like police matter. Now don't get me wrong. There are some people who are genuinely angry at the police and should be like,
Yeah.
and have every right to be angry with the police and how that system's happening and incarcerations. And that's a whole other conversation that I'm not super educated in. But let me just give a really short like analogy to explain like this. My mom, even I forgot about this, but when I was in junior high or high school, my mom battled thyroid cancer. Right now, my some of my best friends are have been going through just all forms of cancer,
Mm.
and it's been just like a story to watch and to walk through with some of my best friends, my family, and if like my friend Caitlin comes up to me and is talking about her husband Jared, and if they
Yeah.
were like talking about pancreatic cancer, if they were talking whatever, like I'm forgetting the name of their cancer right now. I'm so sorry, guys. I love you deeply though. But if they were talking to me about the cancer that they're going through right now,
Yeah.
and in the middle of the conversation, I interrupted, but I was like, but thyroid cancer matters. Like thyroid cancer. Like my mom has thyroid cancer. Like my friend Caitlin is not saying that thyroid cancer doesn't matter. That's just not the
Right.
conversation right now.
Yep.
And so that's what I would just say to people who are like, blue lives matter, all lives matter. No one is arguing with you that like all people don't matter. We're just saying like, if by definition all lives matter, like then Black lives have to matter. And
Yes.
so basically
Mhm.
it's like, don't, we're talking about colon cancer right now. Like, don't bring up thyroid cancer. We're not saying it's not important. We're just saying that's not the conversation at this moment. And that
Yeah.
doesn't devalue it. It just says like, we're talking about something. Would you stay with me long enough to have this conversation? And then
Yeah.
like, could I join you in yours? So I would just say to that, like one of my college roommates, Troy, he's a police officer down in Arizona. Him and I were talking this week. Like, anyway, like I care about police officers. Like I care about all sorts of people. Right now we're talking about Black people, and that's okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's really good. That's a really helpful, succinct way to talk about it. So thank you for that. Um, Before we keep going, I just want to say if anyone's jumping on here, if you have questions for Christian that you would like us to talk about, send them in the question box below. I know we've
I
got
don't
the
know who's
tool.
pointing to the right side, so we
I
just
know
chose
we're just it's somewhere down there.
somewhere down there below
You
us, right
see it at
here.
the bottom of your screen. You know what I'm talking about. It has a question mark. But please send us your questions. We're going to try to get to those at the end. We're not going to scroll back through all the comments to answer those, but please
Too
send
deep.
us a question. Yep. Um, cool. Awesome. You already talked about, so we had this question we were talking about with like
Thanks,
the
Jamie.
same, the,
I was
oh,
right. I pointed the right way, is what Jamie said. Thank you.
oh, yes, perfect. That's awesome. Um, so we had a question set up that you kind of already answered about like the shame that comes with recognizing your
Yeah,
privilege and how like there is a piece of it where like when you recognize it, like that is the good natural response of your heart to go like I'm ashamed that this is something that is real, you know? Um,
right.
but I didn't know if there was just anything else that you wanted to speak to further on like the biblical model of repentance, like because there are
Oh,
probably
wow.
because if we dig into and this is maybe a few steps down the the road in this conversation as people are learning, but just the idea that like as I think back across my own life and go, wow, that was an area where I didn't speak up or
Mm,
I totally like took advantage of my privilege or whatever. Like it would be really easy to be prone to digging into that. And even though those are good things to view through that lens, I just didn't I was just curious if you had any other thoughts about like
Yeah, like repentance and like how do I deal with that?
Yeah.
Again, that's why I think you have to remember, like, again, white friends, family, y'all, like, you're a beneficiary of a system. That doesn't mean you created it even. And so just help fix it. Like, again,
Yeah.
no, I'm not out here trying to say like white people shouldn't have a good life. I'm just trying to say, like, can we all just have that same place? Like, that's
Yep.
even where you get into some of the difference between like equality and equity. Like equality
Yes.
is saying everybody gets the same thing. Equity is saying like I notice that there's a difference in everybody's starting places, so I'm going to help make sure everybody actually has the same experience. And so
Yep.
it's like just really fast. It's like a picture. Like if all of us, I saw this picture the other day. If there was both of us, right? You and me are like, and you're taller than me. So let's say there was a fence, and I'm trying to watch like a baseball game over the fence. Like the first picture would be like I can't see over the fence because I'm shorter than you and you can see over it because you're taller than me. The next
Hmm.
picture of equality would be that like you and I both get boxes in the same height box and I still can't see over the fence and you can just see even better. Equity would then say, Christian, because you're shorter than Isaac, you need a higher box to be able to
Hmm.
see at the same level that Isaac sees at. And so
Yep.
now equity actually doesn't give both of us a box. It gives us boxes that are proportionate to what we actually need to get to the same
Yeah.
place. And
That's
then on
good.
top of that, then actually like dismantling the system would be getting rid of the picket fence and putting up a chain link fence so
Yeah.
both of us can see. And
Yep.
so so that neither of us need the box in the first place. So,
Mhm.
like, if that helps white people even understand a little bit more about privilege, again, I'm not here to say, like, I don't want you to enjoy the game. I just want to enjoy it just as easily as you. And so,
Yep.
please make that just as easy for other people and help us do that.
I love
Don't
that.
feel
That's
guilt,
really
just
good.
join in.
That's really, really good. Man, thank you for that. Um, okay. So the last kind of question I have on here is the one about resources, but there was something we talked about the other day that I wanted to um, just ask you about again. We
Yeah, hit me.
talked about uh, this idea that like I think for a lot of white people, there's this temptation, especially with social media,
Mm,
that once you dive in, that you get to be and or have to be like the hero. That it's like I'm gonna fix this
yeah,
and listen to me because I'm woke, and and I saw
right.
I feel like people are stopping to use that word because it got misused so much, um but I saw like someone posted and they were just like, you're not the hero, you're just like joining the right cause. um
Right.
it
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like basically again, to my friends with privilege and power, do not come as a messiah. Like you're not a
Yeah.
savior, you're just joining the right like you're just joining the right cause. Like you're just using your power in a good way. You're
Yeah.
redirecting. And so it's not to say like you were a villain before and now you're the hero now. It's to say like you're just joining in and you're seeing a
Yep.
problem and you're meeting a need. So like don't be a hero, ask questions. Like personally, I get tired by the overly woke white person just because I'm like,
Right.
yo, I know you just learned about racism. I've lived it my whole life, and I'm just a little like, this isn't news to me, but please give me
Yeah.
your facts right now. Like some
Yeah.
days I'm like, I'm just tired,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I just say like do your part, but again, don't get an ego with it. Especially right now, especially on social media, there's virtue
Yep.
signaling happening right now
Yeah.
because there's this social pressure to like I had a friend who called me and I really respected and appreciated it. They said like, "Hey Christian, I'm not sure if I want to post the black screen today because I just don't fully understand it. But I almost feel like if I don't, people are gonna think I'm a racist." And I was like, "Yo, man, like." I love you deeply. You're a friend. Like, I don't think you're racist because I have lived experience with you. Like, I love you
Yeah.
deeply. I care about you deeply at the very least, he's like, I don't know if I understand everything about Black Lives Matter, if I agree with everything about this or this or this, and I'm not sure if I agree with the riots or the looting and da da da. And I said, man, at the very least, what it's saying to me is that you're showing solidarity. You're just like, I
Yeah.
see you and I empathize. And I was like, that doesn't mean you have to agree with every part. And again, if you choose not to post that black square, I'm not going to think anything differently of you. Like, I will do the work to seeing you as an individual and a loving human being who may not be there yet, and I'm
Yeah.
asking you to do the same for me. And so, like, again, it's civility, it's love. It's like you're human, you're in your own journey, and thanks for letting me be a part of your journey. And so, I think that the reason I think I'm saying that was on purpose, and I'm forgetting it. Basically, there's virtue signaling right now where like it's a
Yeah.
social pressure to even do things. that both can lead people to feeling like the savior of the world,
Hmm.
and it also can leave people feeling really like insincere because they're just sincerely not there yet. And so
Yep.
I think you're not a savior because you joined in, and you're not like some horrible sinner because you're not there yet. You're just, we're all on our own journey, and it's like, how do we step in? And then to kind of ask, I know you were asking about resources, so just because I want to get to
Yeah.
questions too. Um, there's so many good books and resources and podcasts. I mean, there's just, I mean, there's endless sermons at this point right now that are on YouTube. I'll just spit a few. Um,
And I can post some on my
James,
story later too, if that's
yeah, that'd be super helpful. So like one thing I did, so I'm again the pastor at Northwest University. So I spent some time today putting together. We had a small resource page that we didn't really like, people didn't know about, and so we like beefed it up. And so like we can even screenshot that in our story so people can see those resources, with a ton of books. You can go to northwestudevo.com and there's a whole section, or you can go to my website, christiandrewdawson.com, and the links in my bio. Like, not plugging myself, but it's just in there, and you can click
yeah,
the link and it'll take you straight to a
that's
bunch of
perfect.
resources our team has put together. But there's just like, if you just want a quick YouTube, there's a great resource on post-traumatic slavery syndrome. TD Jakes and Carl Lentz did a great conversation this Sunday on at Hillsong East Coast. Stephen Furtick and John Gray had a great conversation. Again, I like that people are having some conversations and dialogue and asking questions, so those are great resources. James Cone is the father of Black liberation theology. He has a great book called The Cross and the Lynching Tree. You could read The Color
Mhm.
of Compromise. That's what our community is going to go through. Anyway, tons of books and resources. Link in my bio. I know you're
I'll
going to post
post
some
them.
stuff, and
Yep.
we'll help that way.
Awesome. Thank you for that, man. Dude, look
Mm-hmm.
at us. We got through all our questions in 40 minutes. We're trying to do this in an hour because Instagram cuts us off. I didn't know that until you told me, but you were
Yeah.
absolutely right. So, but man, we've got time for questions now. So this is so awesome, and people have already sent some really great questions in the box below. Feel free to send more.
Cool.
We probably are not going to get to all of them today, so we may just have. Yeah, I'm just. I think like
Yeah.
at least on my screen, my portion is on top of yours, so I'm really just pointing at you. So
You're
you're
pointing at
pointing.
me, and I'll point at the resource. And
Perfect.
that's sometimes exactly how we need to work in the world. You point to me,
Hey,
and there you go. Anyway, keep going.
an accidental analogy.
And
Um,
it worked.
so yeah, feel free to send more questions. I'm gonna make sure that I like write all these down and save them somewhere because Christian and I might do a part two because obviously we've been racing
Yep.
through all of this. One question that I really loved that came in right away was how do we care well for our Black friends and family in this season?
Yeah. Um, a phone call.
Yeah.
Like, yo, I can't tell you. Like, a text is nice, but some people have called. Also, my phone's been blowing up, so maybe don't call me anymore. But like, but seriously, like the last week and a half, I've had so many people, especially white brothers and sisters, call me and just go, "Hey, man, how are you doing? What's going on?" And like, a lot of people have been saying, "Hey, I know probably a lot of people are talking to you right now, and if you're too tired to talk, don't feel pressure." And so like, just know too, sometimes like, especially African Americans right now, we're just tired. And so like, don't expect us to have to pour our heart out and share everything with you. So give us that space. Like, send a text, "Hey, I love you. I wanted to call and see how you're doing." At the same time, like, if it's not a good time, or if you're just kind of not wanting to talk about stuff right now, that's cool. But but people have been sending me just little videos where they just record themselves, send me a text, just showing love and solidarity. I've had so many phone calls, so many conversations. I just think like, just start with the people you know and just show
Yeah.
love. Like, how would you want to be loved? Like,
Yep.
how would you, yeah, how would you want to be loved? And I'll kind of just speak to one thing that will help explain this a little more too, that I didn't say earlier. But just so you know, the reason why stuff like this is so um, deeply hurtful and hard for the Black community is not just because like this all started 400 years ago as slavery. It's because like the Black community understands itself as a group. Like, we
Yeah.
are we like the black people are a we. And
Mm.
in all of my experience with all of my white friends and family, like, white people don't understand themselves as a unit. It's very white culture, if you can even call it that, is like very individualistic. And
Yeah.
so
Yep.
versus black people, we understand ourselves in we and I. Like, we have institutions set up like the church, like the Black university. Like, we have different things that are set up that help us understand ourselves in a single like story and narrative. And so I'm taught at a really young age from the time I'm a kid, I'm taught to relate to all the black people as my brother and sister, as my auntie. Like
Mhm.
so when you hear black people go like sugar baby, like mama, sweetie, like that's because like that's how we're trained to understand the rest of our people and our culture.
Yeah.
And so we understand that literally in space, but also in time. And so like
Mhm.
so as a young kid, I'm taught that like slaves, like those weren't just people that look like you. That was your brother and your sister and your uncle and your cousin and your
Mhm.
father
Yeah.
and your grandfather and your great great grandmother. And
Yeah.
so like so I feel slavery. I feel Jim Crow laws. I
Yeah.
feel civil rights issues. And so when Trayvon Martin gets shot, when we
Yeah.
have the Ahmaud Arbors, we have the Breonna Taylors, like when they're killed, like it's not just some black person that looks like me.
Yeah.
It's me. And it's
Yeah.
my sibling. You know,
Mhm.
and so we feel it to a different pain, a different level that the white community just doesn't understand because a white
Yeah.
person won't look necessarily at a white cop and think that's your uncle, but like a black person will
Right.
see the black man in the street and go, that's my brother. And so
Yeah.
like that's part of why you have to understand why it's so hard and so emotionally taxing on us.
Mhm.
So just do what you would do if that was your brother. Like, what would you want? Like,
Yep.
I have friends who have lost loved ones, and as so many of us have, and sometimes like they want the phone call, sometimes they just need space. And so,
Yeah.
but just showing love and leaving a voicemail means a lot.
Yep. Oh man, that's really good. Like treating it what it is, and that's grief. Like how do you love someone who's grieving? That's I love that, man.
Mm,
That's really, really good. Thank you for that. Another
yeah.
question we got was how do you start a productive conversation with someone that believes that inequality is equal across the board? And I'm guessing that means that like that there are lots of different kinds of inequality, and
Oh,
how to talk about it with
got
who
it.
thinks that like all of it's the same.
Yeah, like where we're equating different issues in our world. Again, first of all,
Yes.
I just start with one, like the Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter things. I'm not saying other issues aren't important. We're just saying this is what we're
Yeah.
talking about right now.
Yeah. Hmm.
So again, that I don't have to degrade the issue and the significance of what you're saying to ask for the urgency of what I'm saying. You know,
Yeah.
this is
Hmm.
urgent right now. This is what we're dealing with, and yours is important, and we will. So I don't think they have to compete in competition. When you talk to people who say like, well, what about these other issues? I mean, I'd start there. I would again, I want to be a listener too. So if there's someone who's saying like, yo, but like one of my roommate from college, he's like, hey, I'm a cop and like I'm really wrestling with some stuff right now too. Like I'm not just gonna shut him down. Like I want to be an empathetic person and listen to what he's having to say too. And because he's gonna take the time to listen to me, so it's like that love for fellow person and say that. Um, Man, can you say the question though one more time? Because I had one more thought about it, and or
Yes.
maybe I didn't. That might be as smart as I get here.
It's already been great. Question was, how do you start a productive conversation with someone that believes that inequality is equal across the board? Um,
I would just, yeah, okay, and that's where I would say, historically speaking, Um, again, you're talking logic, prefrontal cortex. We're
yeah.
talking limbic system, flight or flight. Like,
Hmm.
understand that, again, I'm not just talking about something happening in 2020 or for the last 20 years. I'm talking about 400 years of my people being imported as product into this country and
Yeah.
sold off. And so, like, again, and that was my great, great, great. Like, that was my brother. That wasn't just some person out there. So, like, you have to understand the real visceral emotional attachment that there is that's real for black people right now. um and so that's so part of me says like they're not equal.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I lovingly would just say to some degree they're not equal. Like there's not a lot of issues that go that deep where like your families were separated and like
Yeah.
killed and enslaved and then chased out of certain states in the country after slavery was abolished and Jim
Yep.
Crow laws happened and civil rights, and now you're seeing it again. I mean, this is 400 years, and that's why, yeah. So it's not just, I'm not saying your issues aren't important. I'm saying, could you just
Yep.
really understand the depth and significance of this?
Totally. Yep. Yep. That's really good. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm gonna go lightning round. I want to hit other questions. I'm gonna go
Okay.
fast.
Cool. What do you want to see from white Christians and churches right now? We've talked about this a little bit, but
I want to see what I keep on seeing. Y'all, there's so much love out there. And right now, I'm actually filled, while I have all these other emotions, I have a ton of hope.
mm,
Not that I truthfully, yeah, like I'm not sure I'm sold that like the whole system is all going to completely change in my lifetime. Maybe I'm too much of a realist or a pessimist, but what I am seeing is some of the heart level stuff that I think my kids one day and my friends' kids now are gonna live in a different world. Like how many of
Mm,
my friends have texted me and said, "Hey, I'm," that have said, "Hey, I'm talking to my kids tonight. Like I'm gonna talk to my 5-year-old."
mm,
So part of me just feels so hopeful for
yeah,
that. I know there's a lot of talk and conversation right now, like white church, white people, pastors, leaders, Christians, followers of Jesus, jump on board. Like,
yeah,
and we like keep doing it and don't just keep doing it for this few weeks. Like every time, like just keep it going. Like let this be a new way that you see the world. Like think long
yeah.
game. The fruit of the spirit is long suffering. Like think of
Oof.
the long haul. Like
Yeah,
God's presence working in you will cause you to endure and do this for the long term.
yeah.
But honestly right now I'm actually encouraged by so many of like my white family and friends to keep to for what how they've already joined in, even in Seattle. And I've seen pictures of
Mm,
protests in Portland, and like I'm seeing all these white faces, and I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, keep it
mm.
up.
That's awesome. Really, really good. Okay. Some of these are long, so they're really tiny. So I'm gonna see if I can read them without my glasses. Um,
You hit
okay.
25, my guy.
Dude, yeah. Oh man,
The
I'm almost
eyesight.
27 now. It's going. Um,
It's that post 25 life. Keep going.
yeah. Okay. This is going back to your analogy about equality and equity in the fence. Um,
Hmm.
what's an idea for how we can help dismantle the fence and put up a chain link fence? Is signing
Woo!
petitions doing anything? Two-part question.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think to some degree there's, I mean, I'm a little bit of like fly the plane and build it later a little
Yeah.
bit at this point.
Yep.
Like
Mhm.
just join in, sign petitions. Basic things you can do is vote for your local government. I am
Yep.
guilty, as so many Americans are, of not voting for our congressmen and women who stay in power and actually write laws. We have a
Mm.
fundamental problem with how we think about the American government. The presidency does not write laws. The
Yeah.
presidency does
Yep.
not do that. So stop just focusing on who's our president for 4 years when we have congressmen and women who are in office for decades writing
Yeah.
actual laws.
Yep.
Like vote for them. Vote for your local officials who govern like policing, and they govern like the judicial systems. Like care
Yep.
about your local government. That's one
Mhm.
way. That is an institution and a system you can help work within.
Yep.
Um, Other chain link fences, again, they start with the heart. Like notice the small biases that you can do that we all carry, and like fight against those. I'm trying to think of like a specific like it's just so complex. I
Yeah.
don't even think I can honestly get into it. There's a great little video I've seen on YouTube and Instagram today that defines white privilege, and I think it
Mhm.
actually does deal with. Have you seen that little that? Maybe you've
Yeah.
seen it. I don't
It's
know.
so good.
It's a little cartoon, and it's actually really helpful for explaining like the chain link fence. So I
Yeah.
would just encourage you. Maybe we can both post that too.
Totally. Yep.
That's a good video. It's already on the resources that I have that we'll post later. Watch that. It'll kind of explain the chain link fence. I don't know where to begin. I'll be honest. There's so
I love
much to it.
One thing that
Um,
same person asked was if like petitions are doing anything. And obviously there's petitions for a million things, but probably the most common ones they're talking about are petitions for getting those officers charged that were involved in the murder of George Floyd, which now they all
right.
have been charged.
Hmm.
And I think that there have been some other petitions, probably about changing laws and stuff.
Yeah, I say, yeah, I don't think you're going to harm anything I don't think you're going to make things worse by signing a petition. Because I think
Yes.
petitions, at the very least, they're saying like, they don't write laws, but they're saying like, we actually care about this issue, and it's demanding
Yeah.
our people who write the laws to do something about it. Otherwise, we're going to vote you out. So, um,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. That's really
I
good.
saw questions zoom in. That was wild.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I clicked on something because I thought I was going to make it bigger because there's a dot 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 on it, but that it's my tiny eyes, man. My not tiny
It's
eyes. You know what
okay.
I mean? Like the
Yeah, it's like you have to
the
really zoom
ability of
in.
them is going away. It's tiny.
And when you
Okay.
get close, the camera shows the pores. So keep it going.
Yes,
I'm gonna say
exactly.
this.
I have
You
an
don't you need to see the stress zits right now.
dude. That's real. You're calling me out.
It's been no,
Okay,
I'm talking about myself. It's been a week.
dude. It has been a week. Okay, I think we have time for one more real quick. I'm going to try to
All
read
right.
this tiny one that trails off. What are some concrete steps that I can take to help rectify the situation? And what steps does our country need to take as a whole? Um, I think we've already,
Woo.
I think we've hit a lot of that
Right.
already, but if this is a lightning round summation of that, question, what would you have to say?
Ah, summation. What are concrete steps? You know what? Here's a stinking concrete step. Tonight at dinner or tomorrow at one of your meals, you call somebody, don't matter what the color of their skin is, and you ask them, what are your thoughts on racism? And you just go like,
Mm,
not is it good or bad, but like, what are your experiences? What do you know? What do you think about everything
yep.
going on? And just have a conversation. I know it sounds small, but again, like I'm also wanting to see like I want my kids to grow up with teachers who have different interactions and
Yeah.
understanding. And that happens by you and like talking to your family right now. So I
Right.
think something really small, it sounds small, but it's not insignificant. Talk to somebody in your house. Like,
Yep.
or if you live by I don't know, I'm like one of the only people I know living by myself. So if you don't live by somebody, like call somebody, get on that FaceTime and just
Yep.
ask questions and listen. And like, I don't care if it's a white person, that's awesome. You guys need to talk about this yourselves.
Yeah.
Like, we
Yep.
need you to talk about this
Yep.
together and get it wrong, but try. So that's
Yes.
small. Institutionally, I would just say like the easiest thing right now is register to vote and not just on the national election, even though that's important.
Yep. Oh man, dude, that's really good. Okay, I just want to make sure that we can actually like conclude this and that Instagram doesn't like cut us off midstream. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's all the questions we're going to go through tonight, and we actually did pretty good on getting to most of them. So, again, if you have more questions, feel free to DM me or Christian, and
Yeah. Hit me up. DMs.
we will we'll either do another one of these or we might post some like question answer stories. I don't know. We'll talk after
That
this
could be cool.
and see what could be a cool kind of next step. But dude, thank you so much.
Oh,
Again,
of course.
I know we talked about this a little bit, but you keep talking about the African American community just being tired right now. And the hard thing is like, as we talked about this a little bit, like as I'm learning, I'm asking you questions and you're already grieving and tired, and then you have to teach
Mm.
and or don't have to, but like are being asked to teach. And so I don't take it lightly that you did this. So thank you for blessing us tonight because it's really important and big.
Yeah.
So again, if you have more questions, send them our way,
Right.
and we'll talk about next steps. I will post resources and that video we talked about. And if this video has been helpful, feel free to send it in the DMs to your friends, and
Yeah.
maybe that can be a helpful start to what do you think about this, that kind of thing. So
Isaac, thanks for the ways you're using your like influence to do good stuff, man. That's just how it starts. And I know you and your wife are those sort of people. So love you
thank
deeply.
you, man. Appreciate it. Would you mind closing us in prayer real quick?
Yeah, 100%.
Appreciate it, bro.
Whew, whew, man. Father, thanks that we're your kids.
Mm,
And again, like I didn't do anything to make myself your kid. Isaac didn't do nothing to make himself
yeah.
your kid. Like we're yours, and
Yes.
that's so good, and that's enough. And
Yes.
I don't even know what to pray because there's so many things I feel right now. Like so many people I love, including myself, are just tired and feel angry, and we feel so much. And so, God, would you continue to be who you said you are, as the God who steps into pain and hurt, and you're close to those who mourn. You comfort those who mourn. You're near to the brokenhearted, and our community is that.
Mm,
I have so many brothers and sisters right now who want to join in and want to help and they're just on different parts of the journey where they're trying to learn. So would you do what only you do? Would you show up in people's lives? Would you actually still be our teacher? Would Jesus and would your spirit really still lead us into truth and teach us? Let our eyes
yes,
be
God.
open to see what's going on. I just ask
Yes.
God in this moment that you would continue to change our hearts, change the hearts of
Mm,
those around us. Would you change our societies? And would you continue to even work in the world behind the scenes? I'm just trusting that you do what you promise and that you work behind the scenes, turning what is meant for evil and using it for good. And so, God, I just ask that you would continue to do that in our cities, our communities, in our country, in our world. In your name
yeah.
we pray. Amen.
Amen. Dude, thank you so much. Appreciate
Of
it. I just
course.
got a
Love you
notification
deeply.
150 remaining. So we've like packed it, man. That was awesome.
Us. We did it.
Great job, bro.
Cool.
Love
Love
you,
you.
man. Have a great rest of your night.
All right, you
Appreciate
too.
you.
Bye.
Bye.